I'd like to think my music taste is pretty varied. Usually it's, heavy music that makes older people think, oh, this generation is doomed. But sometimes I just want to listen to some pop music that's all just like, hey, my ex? Fuck that guy. Welcome to Ray Ronan Does Music, the only music review channel on YouTube that seems to have a different color hair on their host every single time. Seriously, there's like 7 colors going on up here. I'm just gonna wear my hair like this for the rest of the video. Also, if you see dogs in the background, no you didn't. My roommates are out and I'm watching their dogs. They're very cute, but ignore them. Anyways, today we're checking out the solo album from Olivia Rodrigo called Sour. It's her first real solo outing, although she did some previous work with High School the Musical, the series, the TV show on Hulu, as well as the Disney show Bizaardvark. Do you remember Bizaardvark? I tried to block it out of my head, but it just came back to haunt me when I was doing this review, and my brain kind of melted a little bit. While I'm briefly mentioning that, I'm not going to really be acknowledging that past stuff at all, because to me, with the admittedly very limited research I did, anything that has to do with this and anything that has to do with her like Disney and Hulu past, 2 separate things. So we're just not worried about that today. It's sour all day today, like a bag of Sour Patch Kids. You can tell I had a Bang energy drink because I had a Bang energy drink. 2 bangs, 3 Adderalls. With that absolutely crackhead energy intro, though, let's get into the actual music here and what I think is actually a really solid and impressive debut from Olivia Rodrigo. Talking about the album itself, she was actually cited on Instagram Live talking about how she wanted to bring in a few different elements with this album here. She talked about wanting to do, obviously, pop, some alternative pop, as well as some pop rock and even some folk elements, which I didn't really get the folk side of things, but I know that's kind of a very kind of broad thing that you can say like, oh, well, this kind of feels like it kind of doesn't. I'm not too well versed in it, so I'm not going to try and pick and choose where it is in this album. I'm just going to let you guys figure that out there. While there's a pretty big focus on like bedroom pop, I do think that the sort of pop rock and plain rock influence did kind of seep in a pretty good way. You can especially see that in probably one of the most popular tracks, Good For You. And even though you can hear it in the instrumentation and sort of the vocal delivery, I've seen a lot of people in the general public and some reviewers say that this is a poor man's rock look at things. This is a absolutely horrible take on rock music. People have to realize that while mainstream rock, as we realize it, is mainly dominated by, the straight up rock bands like 3 Days Grace, Pop Evil, kind of Five Finger Death Punch, although they're kind of iffy. Not all rock sounds the same. I mean, you have bands like Greta Van Fleet, which I, for one, fucking despise, but they're technically rock music. Then on the complete other side of the spectrum, you have bands like Black Veil Bride, which tend to have more metalcore tendencies, but are still rock music. Not every rock song or artist, or so song in this case, is the same and is going to sound the same in other comparisons. And that's sort of an argument I wanted to bring in with the intro to Good For You, because while it isn't a straight up rock song, it's pop rock, that was something I was seeing discussed a lot in the public eye, and I really wanted to sort of use that as a segue from the intro to the first song discussion here. Now finally getting into that track, Good For You is a pop rock song that really has this absolutely catchy as hell, intoxicating chorus filled with sarcasm, just absolutely filled to the brim with sarcasm, in fact. This is really the only song where you get these rock elements, but they stand out just enough in the chorus as well as the bridge later on to make this song sort of stand out a little more than other songs on the album here. Really trying to create a unique element here, talking about the antagonist of the song being, the ex, and how just pissed off and distraught Olivia Rodrigo is just singing about. I mean, it's all over the song, it's all over the album, but this song is probably the most direct, like, hey, see you over there, hey, fuck you. That's the most direct part of that throughout the album, in my opinion. You really get put into Olivia's mindset and her sort of headspace pretty easily. You're allowed to melt into the feelings that she's putting out here with this track relatively easily. That anger, that betrayal comes from the song and gets into your head, and you're put into, again, the same headspace, and you really start to connect with that song. Lyrically, it's a best case scenario when I get a song talking about an ex with another person. It's not too cheesy and too already overdone that you can say, well, it's just this song part 2, but it has enough of that familiarity that you're like, okay, it's like this song. Looking at another single here with kind of the same element here, Deja Vu has some absolutely sparkly and just, honestly, I think the best word to describe is pretty lyricism that instantly rang inside my head and instantly made me want to talk about it. Here's a little expert from the song. Right at the beginning of the song, I'm going to read off my notes here. It's probably one of my favorite lyrical lines from the entire album here. We got, car rides to Malibu, strawberry ice cream with 1 spoon for 2, and trading jackets, laughing about how small it looks on you. That's like That's Netflix movie material right there, which I'm pretty sure this song's probably been in a Netflix movie. Hey Hunter, in post-editing, has this song been in a Netflix movie? I don't know how else to lead into that. I don't think ahead. I'm an absolute sucker for wordplay there. It rolls off the tongue so well. It sounds so good to the ear. It's a really nice bright spot within that song. And the saccharine sweet wordplay keeps going on throughout the song, which the actual lyrical tones here and the things that the song talks about, it's a really bitter experience. So having the sweet versus the bitter here is a really nice comparison to experience throughout this whole song. You got that Good For You, you got continuing with Deja Vu, you got continuing through a lot of songs really, but I'm just talking about them, here and there. You got some repetitive elements talking about, listening to Billy Joel, but now you're playing that for her on the piano. Repetitivity, both within the lyrical situations that Olivia Rodrigo is singing about, as well as the lyrics, that kind of thing really sounds good when you're both bringing up opposites of the situations you're describing, as well as taking the lyrics you said before, flipping them around a little bit to match that comparison. Sour is definitely an album that's built upon mountains of its namesake. There's bitterness, there's a feeling of betrayal, almost like guilt in a way, but not guilt, a sort of regret, that's what I'm looking for. Guilt, what the fuck? There's plenty of petty anger and just distraught feelings, but there's also, again, the opposite of that. This album deals really well with opposites over and over, and you get a very opposite meaning to Deja Vu and Good For You with the song Happier. Coming in the later half of the album, this track still has the, tongue-biting helplessness of watching a lover move on, but there's almost a sort of like serene calmness built into the song, a sort of like almost acceptance. It's a simultaneous tumultuous, I think I said that word right, whirlpool of emotion where you want to see your former lover move on, but you don't want them to experience the same happiness that they had with you. It's like a double-edged sword there. And I've been on, both sides of that. I've both been the person who moved on and saw the, ex being distraught, not wanting the same thing happen. And I've seen, actually several exes, bad relationships, move on, and I've been sitting there like, okay, have fun, but, don't replicate what we had. That's sort of what Happier really talks about here. It's a very accurate representation of how that feels. It's a very real thing that happens. It's not that sort of, going back to the intro here a little bit, it's not that sort of like Disney breakup thing you see happen where the guy immediately comes back. This is a very real thing that happens in the real world. People move on. You're sad about it. You want to see them happy, but you don't want to see them, again, happy in the way that they were with you. That's it. That's the whole track. I just repeated that sentiment like 3 times. And repetitivity really is a theme that Sour, kind of takes, grabs it, and doesn't really let go of it. There's sort of like a duct tape around both Olivia Rodrigo's wrist and Bitterness' wrist. They're sort of walking hand in hand throughout this whole album. You don't really ever let go of that bitterness, just like you wouldn't let go of it in real life. But this album very much sits with itself. It doesn't really allow much of a look into a different element or a different sort of thing going on here. Sour is sour. Sour is upset. Sour means that you're very much not happy with the situation going on here, but there's not much beyond the meat of that. You can't really do much to develop upon a feeling of anger or feeling of regret and sadness. It's pretty hard to, relay emotions in a way that feels, genuine, fresh and new, especially now with pretty much every kind of musical idea having been a thing recycled over and over. But this album really, while it does it pretty well, the sort of post-breakup vibe doesn't really evolve much beyond face value here. And I'm always down to listen to like a playlist of songs that's all about, high school breakup, angst. Again, the kind of thing that I went through. It's always good to sort of get into that headspace, not for a long time, to sort of like let your emotions play out within your head by using music as a tool for that segue. It's a good thing to experience every now and then, but when that's the whole of the album, minus a couple tracks and less than a quarter of it strung without, you're really getting the same thing over and over again. That's why I haven't really sat and talked about a lot of the tracks on here, because a lot of these tracks are sort of copy and pasted with different words, and you get that admittedly a lot, especially nowadays, because again, things are getting recycled, things are happening over and over, and this is a debut LP here, so you can't expect, an absolute masterpiece right out the gate. But Sour is definitely chock full of the same thing being laser focused on, but the laser's not really spreading out. The only thing being spread here is the idea of, oh, I'm sad post-breakup, and it's being spread as thin as a blanket during winter because you're super cold and you're trying to cover yourself up with as much as possible, but you only got a little bit to work with. It's cohesive, it's steady, it's honestly decent, all things considered, but it doesn't go much past decent and, steady LP here because it's really the same thing, but you're going back to it, adding a little more, another cherry on top, but it's the same Sunday, and by the end of the album, it's kind of melted down. It might seem like I pulled a switch there. I went from, I'm praising this to saying it's the same thing over and over again, but there is praise to be had for this album. It's just not much more beyond the few tracks there, because the few tracks talked about are the best examples. Quickly before the end, I just realized that, reading my script, I completely skipped over Driver's License. Driver's License, another fantastic and obviously more unique example of the sort of post-breakup feelings, really go into more, visual ideas being planted in your head through the lyrics. You said forever, now I'm driving alone past your street. It's again a good visual thing to put in the song, put in people's heads. You're putting a situation and a physical thing into the song to make the song, more and pull you in more. Overall, Olivia Rodrigo hits the gas with Sour, but doesn't really pull off the brakes and hits a couple cones along the roadway as things go on. It's a focused presentation, but it doesn't really go much beyond one core idea. And while it's a great album, I still recommend it. You're just not getting much variance and many things that are different throughout it. Some soaring instrumental beats take center stage, but once again, just one concept laid thin. With these factors in mind, I'm giving Sour by Olivia Rodrigo a 7 out of 10, flat score there. Again, I highly recommend the album. Just don't go in expecting, a whole lot. I didn't. I'm just trying to give that sort of preview and that mention ahead of time, because I like to give people the best preview of things as much as possible. Spotify link down in the description. I don't think she has any tour dates listed, but if she does have any tours, one-off things, I'll list them down in the description as well. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. That has been my review. Again, listen to this album for yourself. Listen to it on your own. It didn't ring with me as much as I thought it would. I had a good time with it. Just didn't quite hit the marks that I was really hoping for and really wishing for. I've been Ray Rono Does Music. If you want to discuss this more with me down in the comment section below, go ahead, bring up anything in here. If you want to argue with me, I'll give some constructive criticism back. I'm down to talk about pretty much anything in the review. We can develop on it further. We can just talk. You can just ask me how my day is going. I'll ask you how your day is going. Whatever. See you next time. Stay hydrated. Have a good day.